Chapter 752. For the real Pellet State martial artists, watching the battle of the heaven and earth mystic realm was simply watching the gods fight. At this time, Fang Fifan and Qi Yuanli, who were watching with the array more than 10 miles away, had this feeling. Even though they were already more than 10 miles away, they could still feel the powerful vibration. It was like an earth dragon turning over. It was extremely terrifying. However, the more terrifying thing was yet to come. The two heaven and earth mystic realm powerhouses attacked together, but the expression on Yi Xiaonan's face still didn't change in the slightest. He just pointed to the sky, and in an instant, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. There was a crack in the sky, and he mended the sky alone. But how could manpower be qualified to mend the sky? Mend Heaven Heart Sutra sounded like a gentle righteous method, but it was actually the power of stealing the sky. The heaven-defying demonic technique that stole the majesty of the gods. In an instant, thousands of Buddhas shattered under Yi Xiaonan's finger, and the Buddhist kingdom completely collapsed and dissipated. With his robe fluttering, Yi Xiaonan's palm fell and hitting Ying's old ancestor Yingxi. The power of this palm encompassed heaven and earth. It seemed to be an ordinary palm, but it seemed to cover the sky. When the fist and palm met, there was a moment of stillness, but the next moment, it was as if the sky collapsed. With the two as the center, a powerful force erupted completely. Cracks appeared on the broken intestine cliff under their feet. In the end, the broken intestine cliff that had existed for countless years was completely destroyed. The black dragon around Yingxi was wailing. Under that powerful force, the black dragon around him shattered inch by inch, and he was directly blasted away by Yi Xiaonan's powerful force. At this moment, the horsetail whisk swept over. When the horsetail whisk swept over, countless Dao patterns turned into silk threads and entangled Yi Xiaonan. Each Dao pattern was densely packed, and each Dao pattern was different. But at this time, Yi Xiaonan waved his hand, and the crescent blade seemed to break through the space, directly cutting the horsetail whisk in half. Countless Dao patterns flew like snowflakes. In a short period of time, Yi Xiaonan had repelled two heaven and earth mystic realm powerhouses and two groups of people with treasures. His power could no longer be described in words. On the cliff more than 10 miles away, the people of the wind-sweeping building didn't even dare to breathe, watching the fierce battle scene nervously. Qi Yuanli suddenly asked, "Floor Master, who do you think will win in the end?" Although Yi Xiaonan had defeated the old celestial master and divine monk Rama in the past, it was not a battle to the death. In a true battle of life and death, victory and defeat were not so easily determined. This time the righteous path sects were outnumbered. Although Yi Xiaonan had the upper hand, in fact, in this kind of siege, the more they fought, the more the side with fewer people would suffer. Fang Fifan shook his head and said, "How would I know? If I could understand the battle between heaven and earth mystic realm martial artists, I wouldn't be the Tower Master of Wind Sweeping Tower, but the Alliance Master of Heaven Alliance. By the way, has the moon-worshipping cult deployed manpower?" Yi Xiaonan was fighting fiercely with everyone on the broken intestine cliff side. On the moon-worshipping cult side, a great battle was bound to break out at any moment. How could Wind Sweeping Tower miss such an occasion? Qi Yuanli nodded. 60% of Wind Sweeping Tower's anemophilia have already gathered around moon-worshipping cult. I guarantee that they won't miss a single detail. Fang Fifan's eyes glowed with excitement as he said, "The Jianghu is turbulent, the wind is rising and the clouds are surging. It's a kind of fortune and an honor for Wind Sweeping Tower to be a witness of this great era." Anemophilia weren't good at martial arts. This was the case for both Fang Fifan and Qi Yuanli. But as anemophilia, they wanted to be a witness of this vast Jianghu. Whether it was the righteous path or the evil path, they were all a part of this Jianghu. Therefore, Wind Sweeping Tower didn't have a position at all. Their identity was like those historians in the imperial court, only responsible for recording history. But in the Jianghu, they had no choice. Historians in the imperial court sometimes had to face the threat of the imperial family. They couldn't write down some ugly secrets about the imperial family, and they had to violate their bottom line to discredit the previous dynasty. Wind Sweeping Tower was the same. When the righteous path was powerful, they would definitely be slightly biased towards the righteous path, and when the evil path was powerful, they would be biased towards the evil path. Of course, in this great war between the righteous path and the evil path, Wind-Sweeping Tower wouldn't be biased towards any side. They would only completely record it and pass it down for eternity. 500 years ago, when the righteous path joined forces to destroy the Kunlun devil cult, the war came too suddenly, causing Wind-Sweeping Tower to be unprepared. Therefore, many of the details were lost. But this time, Wind-Sweeping Tower was well prepared. Outside moon-worshipping cult in Miaojiang, the originally noisy forest was now incomparably quiet. Some of the snakes, insects, and beasts wandering in the forest had been completely scared away by the murderous aura of the martial artists present. At this time, if someone could fly in the sky and look over, they would discover that a large number of martial artists were hiding in the dense forest around moon-worshipping cult. To be precise, they weren't hiding, they were just waiting there, using such a strong force to attack moon-worshipping cult. If they still needed to hide and launch a sneak attack, then the strength of the righteous path sects would be too weak. Among these people, there were monks from the Great Light Temple, Taoist priests from the True Martial Arts cult and the Chunyang Dao sect, the 5 major sword sects, the 7 sects and 8 schools, the 9 major aristocratic families, and a small portion of the righteous path forces in Jianghu. Almost all of them were here, and there was a steady stream of people coming. Among these people, some had been coerced. If the forces they were on good terms with wanted to attack moon-worshipping cult, they naturally wanted to attack too. There were also some who were hot-headed and wanted to come to moon-worshipping cult to destroy the evil path. Of course, there were also some who were brainless and thought that moon-worshipping cult would be destroyed. Therefore, they were like wild dogs that had smelled blood, and were ready to tear off a piece of moon-worshipping cult's flesh. This group of people did not have anyone commanding them, and no one was qualified to command them. However, everyone was waiting at the same time. No one wanted to be the first to stand out. At this moment, the Great Light Temple's Suyin suddenly said, "Benefactors from Wind-Sweeping Tower, please come out. I believe you have already received news. May I ask how the battle situation is?" The martial artist from Wind-Sweeping Tower, who was hiding in the tree and observing the situation, was shocked. He did not expect Su Yun to suddenly ask him about these things. To be honest, this time Wind-Sweeping Tower was prepared to be neutral and not help either side. However, now that Su Yun had asked him, he did not dare to not answer. The martial artist from Wind-Sweeping Tower could only jump down from the tree and walk in front of Su Yun. He said respectfully, "There is news. Your temple's abbot, Great Master Su Yun, has stepped into the heaven and earth mystic realm, and is fighting with Ying family's patriarch, Ying Si, who is also at the heaven and earth mystic realm. There is also Sword King City's city lord, Heavenly Sword Shin Tianwang, Jiannan King Dugali, and the previous Xinjiang Hall's Hall Master Meng Yanghe. 3 true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses are driving Sword King City's treasure, the Human King Sword, to participate in the battle. The true martial sect leader, Sage Xianchen, Lu Chonglu, is also fighting Yi Xiaonan with the horsetail whisk left behind by the immortal Ning Xuanji. The outcome is unknown." As the warrior from the Wind-Sweeping Tower spoke, everyone present took in a deep breath. In the past, Su Si's stepping into the mysterious realm of heaven and earth was already big news. However, in front of this matter, it was just an embellishment. There was also the Ying family's patriarch Ying Si. Who was that? Some of the martial artists who were born in recent years had not even heard of this name. Only some of the older martial artists vaguely remembered the dead patriarch of Shangshui Ying clan in the past. Moreover, Sword King City had attacked with all their strength. The true martial sect's Lu Chonglu had also taken out the immortal's relic. This kind of lineup was terrifying just thinking about it. At this moment, after Su Yun heard this, a smile appeared on his face. It was unknown whether he was smiling because Su Si had stepped into the mysterious realm of heaven and earth, or because he thought that the outcome had been determined with so many people besieging Yi Xiaonan. "Disciples of Great Light Temple, attack with me." As soon as he finished speaking, Su Yun took a step forward. Buddha's light surged around his body. The surrounding disciples of Great Light Temple also followed him. They chanted scriptures, and their voices were extremely majestic. There were so many forces present. They had not attacked before because they lacked a leader. At this moment, the people of Great Light Temple took the lead to attack. They also seemed to have gained courage. They followed behind Great Light Temple and prepared to attack. In front of moon-worshipping church, the 9 great god Magispriests were all present. Behind them were moon-worshipping church's high priest and saintess, as well as a group of moon-worshipping church disciples. It could be said that moon-worshipping church had long been prepared for this battle. To put it in a more profound way, this was another confrontation between the orthodox and demonic paths. Whether the orthodox path was stronger or the demonic path was higher depended on the outcome of this battle. To put it in layman's terms, it was the orthodox sects testing moon-worshipping church's strength. Its nature was similar to that of Chu Xiu's. If you have the strength, we can't kill you even if we attack. That's good. This is your moon-worshipping church's strength, and it is also your moon-worshipping church's luck. From now on, the number 1 sect of the demonic path would be recognized by the underworld, and both sides would once again fall into a balance. On the other hand, if moon-worshipping church could not survive this time, then for the orthodox sects, this would be a successful elimination of demons. They would eradicate a large demonic path sect that was developing towards the Kunlun devil cult, which was worthy of celebration. In this underworld, it was useless to talk about high-sounding principles. Only strength was the real truth. Fists and knives were always more useful than words. Looking at the dense murderous intent in front of him, the high priest suddenly said, "Do you think the leader can win?" Dong Huangtai did not turn his head. He only faced forward and said lightly, "You are the high priest, and you still ask me. Isn't divination what your lineage is good at?" The high priest sneered and said, "My lineage is good at divination, but when it comes to me, what I'm good at is killing." At this time, Dong Huangtai could not be bothered to bicker with the high priest. He only said in a low voice, "I also don't know if the leader can win. I only know that the leader will not lose." In Dong Huangtai's eyes, Yi Xiaonan was a godlike existence. People could lose, but gods could not be defeated. Therefore, the incomparably arrogant Dong Huangtai looked down on everyone. He looked down on the high priest and moon-worshipping church's holy maiden, because they were barbarians of Miaojiang. He also looked down on the other 8 god Magispriests, thinking that they were not worthy of having the same name as him. But Dong Huangtai, who was arrogant to the point of conceit, would only bow in front of Yi Xiaonan. Chapter 753. On a hill a few miles away from moon-worshipping cult, the people of the Yinma clan gathered and observed the situation below. Chu Xiu stood behind Wei Shuya. He also saw Xing Situ, who was looking at him maliciously from time to time, but Chu Xiu did not care. There were countless warriors in Jianghu who wanted to tear him to pieces. Who was Xing Situ? Seeing that the Great Light Temple had already made their move, the Yinma clan did not immediately help. It was not that the Yinma clan did not keep their word, but they had already said before that they would not risk their lives for moon-worshipping cult. The first wave of attack was the most dangerous. If moon-worshipping cult could withstand this attack, then the Yinma clan would take action. On the other hand, if moon-worshipping cult could not even withstand the first wave of attack, then the Yinma clan would naturally not come to die. The atmosphere on moon-worshipping cult's side was extremely tense, so was the Yinma clan. At this time, Mei Qinglian could not help but say, "Hey, when the world's righteous sects joined forces to besiege the sacred church, is this the scene now?" Chu Xiu did not speak, but Wei Shuya snorted and said, "Don't think too highly of moon-worshipping cult. Compared to the sacred church, moon-worshipping cult is still too far away. In the past, all the righteous sects in Jianghu joined forces to besiege the sacred church, and even neutral forces did not exist. Even a force like Wind Sweeping Tower was coerced by those righteous sects to provide them with information. One could imagine how crucial that battle was. Because it was a battle of life and death, all the righteous sects in the world knew that as long as the sacred church was not destroyed, they would always live in fear. Therefore, no one dared to hold back, and no one would hold back. Now, as you can see, although moon-worshipping cult has provoked some people, it is far from the level of the entire Jianghu. Even some of the old monsters in the righteous sects have not made a move. Otherwise, do you think the old Celestial Master and Rama are so trustworthy that they would seal the mountain and not make a move? Wei Shuya was old and experienced, So he was very clear about some of the unspoken rules in Jianghu. While they were talking, the two sides had already set up their battle formations and were facing each other. In terms of power and numbers, the moon-worshipping church was definitely at a disadvantage. However, now that the moon-worshipping church was ready to fight to the death, their momentum was not weak. Su Yun shook his head and said, "I believe all of you are aware of the situation over at Yi Xiaonan's side. The siege wasn't glorious, but it was very effective. Do you think Yi Xiaonan can still return to the moon-worshipping cult? There was no point in fighting to the death. Put down the butcher's knife. Although you can't become a Buddha, I can help you overcome your inner demons." Those who were familiar with Su Yun's personality looked at him in surprise. Su Yun actually persuaded them to surrender? What kind of trick was this? In the hearts of the people of Jianghu, Su Yun not only represented his unfathomable strength, but his methods were also famous in Jianghu. When Su Ci was in seclusion, Su Yun was in charge of the Great Light Temple. He did things decisively and forcefully. No one could talk conditions in front of Su Yun. Although Su Yun was criticized for being inflexible, he was extremely decisive. But now he actually wanted to recruit the moon-worshipping cult. Had he changed his temperament? In reality, Su Yun just didn't want the Great Light Temple to suffer too much damage. Dong Huangtai had confidence in Yi Xiaonan, and Su Yun also had confidence in Su Ci. He believed that Su Ci and the others would win in the end. Anyway, they already had hope of winning. Although there were many people here, this was not the main battlefield. Since that was the case, why fight until both sides suffered? Dong Huangtai laughed. The demonic flames around him were monstrous. It was as if they covered the sky and the sun as they soared into the sky. Overcome my inner demons? Unfortunately, my demonic nature is too deep. Su Yun, you can't overcome me. Even if your Buddha comes, he still doesn't have the qualifications to overcome me. As Dong Huangtai's voice fell, he used the Burning Sky treasure book to its limit. The demonic flames that filled the sky fell like a meteor shower. The power was unparalleled. Su Yun sighed. The Buddha's light around him shone brightly. He chanted the Buddha's voice. Every syllable he uttered shook the void and echoed. When the 6 syllables were uttered, the Buddha's voice reverberated in the sky. It was like a scripture that resounded throughout the world. In the Buddha's voice, the demonic flames melted and turned into Buddha's light. Seeing that the two on this side had already started fighting, the other moon-worshipping church martial artists and the righteous sect's martial artists also began to fight. In an instant, the front of the moon-worshipping church's mountain gate instantly turned into a pot of porridge. Countless gang cheese exploded, sword cheese swirled, and saber lights scattered everywhere. In the battle just now, moon-worshipping cult was actually at a disadvantage. The strength of moon-worshipping cult was not weak. In addition to the 9 divine magispriests, moon-worshipping cult also had more than 10 martial arts grandmasters. Some were from the older generation, and some were newly advanced. They led the fearless disciples to block the first wave of attacks. The high priest of moon-worshipping cult cast a curse technique at the rear. Even the powerhouse of true fire spirit refinement state was targeted by his illusory demonic blood curse. The martial arts real pellet state couldn't resist for long before being cursed by him. Moreover, this was the gate of moon-worshipping cult. How could moon-worshipping cult not have the slightest preparation? The moment everyone made their move, moon-worshipping cult's array had already lit up to assist the disciples of moon-worshipping cult to kill the people of the righteous sections. It was a pity that even though moon-worshipping cult had prepared so much and their strength was not weak, the righteous sects only had one advantage, which was that they had more people. Even the Great Light Temple was not as good as moon-worshipping cult as a single major sect. But now there were dozens of forces, big and small, added together. They had a martial arts grandmaster and a few unity of heaven and man martial artists. In this way, no matter how strong the people of moon-worshipping cult were, they couldn't withstand it. Especially in the area of high-level combat power, Dong Huangtai's strength was indeed superior, but the righteous sects also had Su Yun who could match him. As for the other major sects such as Chunyang Dao sect, Storm Sword Tomb, Xiahou clan, and other forces, they also had true fire spirit refinement state powerhouses. How could moon-worshipping cult block them? How long are you going to keep watching? At this moment, Dong Huangtai suddenly roared. Hearing this voice, Su Yun's heart suddenly sank. Who is watching? Who are the people of moon-worshipping cult waiting for? At this moment, on the small mountain, Wei Shuya stretched his waist and said calmly, "Everyone, you can attack now, lest those people from moon-worshipping cult say that we're not trustworthy." As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic qi around Wei Shuya erupted and directly surged towards the battlefield. Behind him, countless hidden devil clan martial artists also erupted with powerful demonic qi around them as they followed Wei Shuya. The expressions of the righteous sect's martial artists who were fighting with moon-worshipping cults suddenly changed. The hidden devil clan actually joined the battle. How was that possible? Everyone in the pugilistic world knew about the feud between the Bright Devil clan and the Hidden Devil clan. The Hidden Devil clan hated the Bright Devil clan for being traitors, watching from the sidelines and even kicking them when they were down. The feud between the two sides was no less than the feud between the righteous and demonic sections. Yet now the Hidden Devil clan actually attacked. What price did moon-worshipping cult pay? Looking at the figures of Wei Shuya and the others, Su Yun sighed and said, "All these years, the righteous sects didn't go all out to kill the Hidden Devil clan. They clearly gave you a way out. So why do you have to jump into this muddy water?" A way out. It's fine if you don't want a way out now. This time, if you really destroy moon-worshipping cult, I'm afraid that the next step will be to join forces to destroy my Hidden Devil clan, right? Wei Shuya sneered. Su Yun shook his head. Although the Hidden Devil clan was declining day by day, there were still people who understood. Everyone had done things like putting one's own safety before matters of principle. The only difference was when to keep a low profile and when to make a move. If the Hidden Devil clan was a group of self-interested short-sighted people, then there was no need to worry. However, it seemed that there might be such people in the Hidden Devil clan, but there were also people like Wei Shuya who understood. It could only be said that the Hidden Devil clan was not fated to die. Since your Hidden Devil clan is destined to get involved in this muddy water, then today, all of you will also stay in moon-worshipping cult. Su Yun's body shone with Buddha's light, and the immeasurable Buddhist kingdom condensed. Half of the sky above the entire battlefield was shrouded by the endless Buddha's light. At Su Yun's level, even wind-sweeping tower couldn't figure out his true strength. Therefore, the ranking was only ranked according to the strength that these experts showed when they last made a move. The last time Su Yun made a move was a few years ago. Because the Northern Yen Heavenly Sin branch was destroyed, Butian Nan, the leader of the Blue Dragon Society, came to fight. Su Yun made a move once. However, Su Yun didn't use his full strength at that time. He only made a few moves to force Butian Nan to retreat. The outside world said that Butian Nan was a madman, and his actions were indeed very crazy. However, a madman was not a fool. Therefore, after feeling that he was no match for Su Yun, Butian Nan directly left and didn't choose to fight to the death. This time, Su Yun showed his strongest strength in the battle between the righteous and demonic paths. This power fluctuation was probably not far from the mysterious heaven and earth realm. At this time, Chu Xiu also joined the battle, but he was not doing anything. Of course, it wasn't that Chu Xiu deliberately slacked off, but this kind of situation wasn't worthy of his full strength. The real battlefield that decided the outcome was Yi Xiaonan. This was just a lower-level battlefield. Even if the winner was decided here, if Yi Xiaonan lost, the moon-worshipping cult wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Moreover, with Su Yun, Dong Huangtai, and Wei Shuya, who were powerhouses in the true fire spirit refinement state, fighting, the martial Dao masters who were considered powerhouses in other places were no longer powerful enough. It was normal for them to be killed if they were not careful. Although Chu Xiu had the experience of killing a true fire spirit refinement realm cultivator before, Feng Jinwu had been too scheming back then. Moreover, to put it bluntly, Feng Jinwu was old after all, and he was a loose cultivator. All the existences who had reached the true fire spirit refinement realm were great sections. Some of them were even ranked on the reputation list with extraordinary combat strength. Chu Xiu didn't want to get close to them. Anyway, one more person wouldn't affect the overall situation of the battle. Chu Xiu used the Great Soul-Searching Hand to kill people from below. With a wave of his hand he could extract souls. It was simply a killing weapon. It was very simple and easy. However, at that moment, Chu Xiu felt a warm sensation in his chest. The red bead of blood he obtained from Lin Baohuang's body suddenly throbbed. It was a very clear feeling. It needed fresh blood, a lot of fresh blood. Chapter 754. Chu Xiu didn't know how to use the blood pearl that he had obtained from Lin Baohuang. Back then, he had chosen this item only because when he saw the blood pearl, he had felt a throbbing sensation in his body. That was why Chu Xiu had chosen it. Originally, Chu Xiu was going to wait until he returned to the Zhenwu Hall to study this thing. He did not expect that the war between the righteous and demonic factions would come so soon. The moon-worshipping cult had already started fighting, so he had to put this matter aside for the time being. And now, he felt the throbbing of this blood bead. This thing actually needed to be fed with fresh blood for sacrificial refining? However, when he thought that this thing was something from the Kunlun devil cult in the past, Chu Xiu also felt relieved. It would be strange if the things of the demonic path were not evil. Therefore, after feeling this throbbing, Chu Xiu immediately gave up using the great soul-searching hand of extinguishing sky and extinguishing earth to kill people. Instead, he used the great demonic blood technique to drain the opponent's blood and qi. However, this move of his was extremely conspicuous. When Chu Xiu used the great soul-searching hand of extinguishing sky and extinguishing earth, there was actually no strange phenomenon. The power of the person's spirit was completely extracted, and the person died directly. There was not even the release of gang qi. However, at this time, Chu Xiu used the great demonic blood technique with all his strength. Everywhere he passed, the evil power of the great demonic blood technique began to madly extract the blood of the surrounding warriors. Strands of blood flew, with Chu Xiu in the center. At this time, Chu Xiu looked like the reincarnation of the blood demon. Moreover, the warriors who had their blood and qi drained became extremely terrifying. Without blood and qi, the corpses were like dried corpses. There was only a layer of skin wrapped around the body, and they simply did not look like humans. In this way, wherever Chu Xiu passed, he directly left behind a ground of dried corpses, which was extremely conspicuous. If Chu Xiu kept a low profile, it would have been fine. However, he was so high profile that he was wantonly killing here. It immediately attracted the attention of some righteous sects powerhouses, and they all attacked him. Chu Xiu, how dare you? A furious shout rang out, and 3 old Taoist priests from the pure Yang Dao sect surrounded Chu Xiu in the middle. Among them was Master Su Yangzi, who had come to find trouble with Chu Xiu before. Last time, Chu Xiu, you were lucky enough to survive. Now you're getting involved in the matter of moon-worshipping cult. Are you courting death? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, I don't know if I'm courting death, but I do know that you're definitely here to court death. A loser dares to bark in front of me. If not for that young martial uncle of yours bringing your patriarch's pure yang sword, do you think you have the right to say such nonsense in front of me? Although it was said that different people could not make plans together, but Chu Xiu was not extreme to the point of being hostile to all the people from the righteous sections. For example, Chu Xiu had a good relationship with Feng Qishao. He did not hate Ing Bailu, but rather admired him. Of course, Feng Qishao did not come today, and neither did Ing Bailu. Sword King City and Shangshui Ing clan were not idiots. The war between the righteous and demonic sects was a war between the righteous and demonic sections. It was not a battle to the death. They had already taken action with their high-end combat power, so the people below them naturally did not need to come and fight. However, if one were to say who Chu Xiu hated the most among the righteous sects, it would undoubtedly be the monks from Great Light Temple and the Taoists from Chunyang Dao sect. The former was unreasonable, while the latter only listened to reason. It was impossible to communicate with them. Therefore, when Chu Xiu faced them, he usually liked to use his fists and knives to talk. That was more effective than talking with reason. Therefore, before Zhu Yangzi and the other two could speak, a demonic saber appeared in Chu Xiu's hand. It was the evil saber of the 7 demonic sabers. The demonic dance was left with Mo Yezi to be repaired and upgraded. During this time, Chu Xiu did not use the saber much. Although the 7 demonic saber was also a saber, its greatest effect was to arouse the 7 emotions and 6 desires in one's heart. When faced head-on, Its toughness was far inferior to the demonic dance. Guan Xiu had shattered his beloved saber in the past, but it did not matter. For the current Chu Xiu, he was emotionless, without love, and without emotions. Even if he had the beloved saber in his hand, he could not control it like he could comprehend the hatred of the hatred saber. However, the other sabers were still fine. Chu Xiu did not want them to shatter as well. However, when he attacked Zhu Yangzi and the other two, he used the evil saber at the right time. Who said that the righteous sects did not have evil in their hearts? The righteousness that they boasted about was the greatest evil. The evil saber fell, and the saber chi swept out. Although it was blocked by the powerful pure yang energy of the three of them, the power of the evil saber penetrated deep into their hearts and affected their inner demons. Zhu Yangzi and the other two old Taoists were veteran martial Tao grandmasters of the Chunyang Tao sect. Putting aside their own strength, they had experienced enough. They might have killed more people than some of the demonic Tao sect's people. Who would dare to say that none of the people he had killed in his life were innocent? Who dared to say that they did not have any evil intentions, and did not do anything that went against their conscience? Before they could attack, Zhu Yangzi and the other two were hit by the evil saber. They spat out a mouthful of blood and barely suppressed their restless inner demons. Set up the pure young demon slaying sword array. Zhu Yangzi shouted angrily. The other two martial Tao grandmasters of the Chunyang Tao sect also attacked immediately. Two long swords flew out from each of them. Together with the long swords in their hands, the pure yang energy and sharp sword qi danced on the 9 long swords. The violent sword qi soared into the sky. The 9 swords circulated and surrounded Chu Xiu in the center. As the sword qi scattered, they attacked wildly at Chu Xiu. Zhu Yangzi was just stubborn, but he was not an idiot. Since he had already suffered a loss in the hands of Chu Xiu, he naturally would not rush over recklessly this time. Although they had suffered a small loss in the first exchange, they still had the strength to fight. The pure young demon slaying sword formation of the Chunyang Tao sect was quite famous in the pugilistic world. In the past, a demon lord of the Kunlun devil cult had died in this sword formation. Of course, the sword formation was set up by the 9 true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses of the Chunyang Tao sect. There was also a heaven and earth elemental realm powerhouse who presided over the sword formation. Now that the 3 of them had joined forces, although their power could not be compared to the patriarch, it was not weak either. In the sword formation, the pure yang energy soared into the sky. It was very eye-catching. Some people on the battlefield subconsciously looked over. Could it be that the Chunyang Tao sect was fighting with a divine magus of the moon-worshipping cult? Even the pure young demon-slaying sword formation was used. However, when they saw that the one who was surrounded in the sword formation was actually Chu Xiu, they were relieved. Chu Xiu's strength was obvious to all. He was not weaker than the divine magus of the moon-worshipping cult. It should be said that his strength was even far stronger than most of the divine magi of the moon-worshipping cult. It was worth it for the Chunyang Tao sect to use the pure young demon-slaying sword formation to deal with him. Some of the people of the moon-worshipping cult suddenly had a good impression of Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was a member of the Yinma clan. Although he had promised to help them, the people of the moon-worshipping cult thought that he might not use his full strength. But now it seemed that they had misjudged Chu Xiu. He had attracted 3 grandmaster-level powerhouses of the Chunyang Tao sect all at once, sharing a lot of the pressure for them. This Chu Xiu was really meticulous. Even the Holy Virgin of the moon-worshipping cult controlled the gu insect to kill the opponent while saying to Yi Tianxia, who had also come to help, "Look at Chu Xiu. He only came to help, but he could attract 3 grandmaster-level powerhouses of the Chunyang Tao sect. Look at yourself." Yi Tianxia wanted to vomit blood when he heard this. How could they compare? If he had the ability to fight against 3 martial Tao grandmasters, would he still need to suck up to a woman like her? The Yinma clan was invited by the moon-worshipping cult with conditions. As a sect of the Bright Demon clan, the evil pole sect had always followed the moon-worshipping cult's lead. Of course, he had to come himself. In the end, he took the initiative to come, but he was despised for being weak. Yi Tianxia's resentment could even be felt by some of the warriors around him. They could not help but stay away from him. At the same time, Yi Tianxia's attacks became more violent. At this time, in the field, Chu Xiu was trapped in the sword formation. He raised his eyebrows, put away the evil sword in his hand, and made a Buddhist seal with his hand. The sun-changing technique had already been cast. The pure young demon-slaying sword formation could slay demons, but he did not know if this Buddha could. In an instant, endless Buddhist light rose from the sword formation. The Vairocana phantom behind Chu Xiu formed the colorless fixing palm seal. Everything in front of him began to distort and melt, and the countless pure yang sword chi were instantly destroyed. Damn it! This is the work of those fools from the Buddhist sects. Seeing this scene, Su Yangzi could not help but curse. Master Tamuan, a Buddhist holy monk, actually passed on a pure Buddhist technique to Chu Xiu, a demon whose hands were stained with blood. If this was not a fool, then what was? The pure young demon-slaying sword formation had a great suppression on the power of demons, but it was not the same as slaying the Buddha. For other power attributes, this sword formation seemed very normal. The Vairocana phantom continued to attack wildly, and the sword formation erupted with dazzling gang chi light, but it was still useless. Cracks gradually appeared on the 9 swords. Finally, under Chu Xiu's ferocious attacks, they all exploded with a loud bang. Just based on the foundation of power, Chu Xiu was stronger than the few old Taoists from the Chunyang Dao sect. The foundation of power was not something that grew stronger the longer one lived. At the age of Su Yangzi and the others, it was already good if their power did not decline, let alone increase. The power of the primordial spirit condensed into arrows, and the soul-extinguishing arrows shot straight at Su Yangzi. Moreover, the arrows came one after another, without any pause. With the support of the heaven's sun gazing at air, it was basically impossible to dodge. Su Yangzi could only use his pure yang astral qi to resist. Compared to the true qi of other attributes, pure yang astral qi was even stronger against this primordial spirit secret technique. Unfortunately, it was still useless. After a few arrows, Su Yangzi's primordial spirit was already heavily injured, and blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. The swords in the hands of the remaining 2 old Taoists had already shattered, but they could not just watch as Su Yangzi was killed. Therefore, when one of them held a horsetail whisk and swung it down, the horsetail whisk erupted with thousands of golden rays, enveloping Chu Xiu's entire body. The other person formed a seal with his hand. Pure yang gang qi condensed in the seal. It was as if the sun was falling from the sky. It fell towards Chu Xiu's head, causing a violent explosion. Chapter 755. A large orthodox sect like the pure young Taoist sect had heritage in heritage. Such a large sect might not be stronger than some of the rising forces, but their only advantage was that all the warriors from the pure young Taoist sect were not too weak. To put it simply, martial artists from large sects like Chunyang Dao sect might not have an upper limit, but their lower limit was very high. Unlike the World Alliance, there was only one powerhouse, Chunqing Di, and the rest were all nobodies. There were only a handful of people in the underworld who could be besieged by 3 martial Dao grandmasters from Chunyang Dao sect. Unfortunately, they had encountered one today. Looking at the 2 Chunyang Dao sect grandmasters who were attacking him, Chu Xiu had a murderous look in his eyes. The blood pearl in his body was very eager for the power of qi and blood. The qi and blood of a martial Dao grandmaster was definitely stronger than that of a martial artist at the oneness of heaven and man realm. Although these 2 guys did not look young, they were not to the point where they could not squeeze out any qi and blood. Therefore, Chu Xiu's figure moved, his speed exploding to the extreme. As he charged toward one of them, he shot 3 soul-extinguishing arrows in a row at the other person. The annihilating heaven and earth obliterating selfless killing fist fell with a domineering momentum, as if it wanted to crush everything. It went straight toward the martial artist who was using the Dao seal. With a loud bang, countless demonic aura and pure yang qi scattered in all directions. Chu Xiu was surrounded by black demonic aura, and even formed an armor. This was the sign of the 9 heavens fiend golden body refinement. After obtaining this technique, Chu Xiu had been fighting with others. This kind of body refining technique could only improve through continuous fighting. Although this technique was given to him by Lu Fengxian, Chu Xiu's understanding of this technique might even be stronger than Lu Fengxian's. surrounded by demonic aura. Chu Xiu was like a demon god who had descended. The pure yang qi around the Chunyang Dao sect martial artist opposite him had been completely smashed by Chu Xiu. After several punches, half of the martial artist's bones were even broken, and blood spurted out of his mouth. No matter how strong the strength and foundation of the Chunyang Dao sect martial artist was, he was still not as strong as the current Chu Xiu. Don't waste so much qi and blood. Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hands. Countless demonic aura and blood qi burst out like a spider web, completely entangling the Chunyang Dao sect martial artist. It was like a huge black and red cocoon, extremely terrifying. Su Yangzi and the other martial artists no longer cared about the injuries of their primordial spirits. They released their strongest power and attacked Chu Xiu. Among them, Su Yangzi even ignited his qi and blood. Clearly he was ready to fight with his life. Chu Xiu formed a Buddhist seal with his hands and quickly formed the seals of the fast and slow 9 words formula. 9 Buddhist seals circled around his body, but at this moment, Chu Xiu was still enveloped by the demonic aura armor, which made him look abnormally evil. When the hand seals landed, the power of the 9 seals combined into one instantly shattered everything in front of him. The pure yang qi was completely melted. At this moment, Chu Xiu swung his hand, and the huge black and red cocoon smashed towards the two like a huge hammer. Su Yangzi and Su Yangzi knew that the people inside were their senior and junior brothers, so they did not dare to take it head-on. They could only wrap their vital energy in the huge cocoon and try to make it fall slowly. However, at that moment, the large cocoon suddenly exploded. Countless demonic auras and bloodlust auras burst out. In an instant, Master Su Yangzi and the other pure Yang Dao sect grandmaster were sent flying with blood spurting out of their mouths. There was also a huge crater that was hundreds of feet wide on the ground. Some of the warriors who were closer were even blown to smithereens. Looking at the center of the huge pit, the Chunyang Dao sect grandmaster had already been sucked dry by Chu Xiu. After the chaotic battlefield saw this scene, the small area close to Chu Xiu suddenly fell into a moment of silence. Facing 3 martial Dao grandmasters from Chunyang Dao sect head-on with his own strength and easily killing one and seriously injuring the other 2. Could it be that Chu Xiu's strength had really reached the true fire spirit refinement state? However, how long had it been since he broke through to martial Dao grandmaster? Seeing was believing. Chu Xiu's killing of Fang Jinwu could be considered a trick and a sneak attack. Although he still died in the end, it was still not a very convincing story. Now that Chu Xiu was facing the enemy head-on in front of so many people, there was no need to doubt his strength anymore. At this moment, Chu Xiu was feeling the blood pearl on his body. This thing had swallowed a lot of martial artists' blood before. There were people of all levels, but there was no change at that time. It was not until this thing swallowed the blood of a martial Dao grandmaster that there was a qualitative change. Chu Xiu could not tell what kind of change it was, but he seemed to feel that there were many things hidden in this blood pearl. Of course, at this time, Chu Xiu had no time to study those things because he found that with his actions, he seemed to have angered the crowd. Great Light Temple's Vajra courtyard Skunda Venerable. Su Yan brought 2 old monks who were also from the Vajra courtyard. Although they were old, their qi and blood were still strong and surrounded Chu Xiu. It was true that Taoism and Buddhism could not coexist, but the Great Light Temple could not just watch a person from the demonic Dao act violently here. There was also a Sword Dao Grandmaster from the Storm Sword Tomb, and the Forgetting Sword Hut walking towards Chu Xiu with a sword. Cheng Tingshan from the Hidden Sword Villa, who had been defeated by Chu Xiu in the past, also walked towards Chu Xiu with 2 swords in his hands with a hint of murderous intent. Cheng Tingshan had seen Chu Xiu before, but at that time, he acted as if he did not see him and still killed those demonic Dao martial artists from the moon-worshipping cult. Now that he saw Chu Xiu being besieged by everyone, he did not mind hitting him when he was down again. Chu Xiu furrowed his brows. This was not in line with his previous plan. Previously, Chu Xiu did plan to keep a low profile, but now it seemed that it would not work. Now the righteous sects were joining forces to attack the moon-worshipping cult. In other words, they were the hunters, and the moon-worshipping cult was the prey. As a result, Chu Xiu was arrogantly killing here. He was even more conspicuous than the 9 great divine magispriests of the moon-worshipping cult. This was simply a provocation. If they did not get rid of him, who knew how many more people would die in his hands? However, all of a sudden, 6 martial Dao grandmasters turned to attack Chu Xiu, which greatly reduced the pressure on the moon-worshipping cult. Even Dong Huangtai looked at Chu Xiu with a praising gaze. When he said that he would help, he did not hold back at all. There were very few honest and kind young people like him now. Sometimes it was not a good thing to be too calculative. Just like Dong Huangtai, if he wanted to kill someone, he would go all out. He would directly burn some of the burning sky mirror. Why would he care about so many schemes and gains and losses? Anyway, now he saw that Chu Xiu was quite to his liking. It was a pity that Chu Xiu had already become a subordinate of the Hidden Devil clan. It was impossible for him to snatch him away. This also made Dong Huangtai feel a little pity. What future would there be for Chu Xiu to follow those old farts of the Hidden Devil clan? If he joined the moon-worshipping cult, Dong Huangtai would even be willing to nurture him as the next generation Dong Huangtai. Chu Xiu did not know what the others were thinking, but he knew that he seemed to be in big trouble. To be honest, Chu Xiu would rather fight with the seriously injured Fang Jinwu again than fall into this kind of siege. The reason was very simple. When fighting with Fang Jinwu, no matter how strong the opponent was, he could concentrate and use 100% or even 120% of his strength. Now that he was being besieged, Chu Xiu had to be distracted to observe the attacks of the others. This was bound to affect his battle. Moreover, any accidents could happen in this kind of siege. So Chu Xiu did not dare to go all out. He even had to save 20% of his strength to deal with unexpected situations. This kind of battle was a little frustrating. Moreover, the opponents were not a motley crew. It was impossible for them to be like when Chu Xiu was besieged in the past. He would first kill a few who shouted happily, and the others would naturally choose to escape. None of the people in front of him were to be trifled with. Su Yan chanted the name of Buddha, and the 2 monks beside him shone with a dazzling Buddhist light. It was as if they were plated with a layer of gold as they charged towards Chu Xiu. They had not cultivated the Temple of Great Light's indestructible golden body, but their strength was not weak. Every step they took would cause the ground to tremble. At this time, Cheng Tingshan, the 3 people from Storm Sword Mound, and the Forgetful Sword Hut also drew their swords. In an instant, sword chi shot into the sky, bringing with it a boundless sharpness. They followed closely behind the 3 people from the Temple of Great Light, and stabbed towards Chu Xiu. These 6 people did not know each other before. Only Cheng Tingshan had a wider circle of friends, and could talk to anyone. However, their rich experience in fighting in the Jianghu allowed them to have a tacit understanding when they attacked. The 3 warriors from the Temple of Great Light relied on their close combat prowess to fight Chu Xiu. As long as Chu Xiu revealed the slightest opening, the 3 people's sword chi would merge into one and attack Chu Xiu. Faced with this kind of power, Chu Xiu's speed exploded to the extreme. As he retreated, he also cast Heaven's Sun gazing at air to the extreme. As he escaped, he evaded the attacks of the few people. Although he looked a little flustered and messy, he was able to temporarily block them. He had to think about how he could kill a few more while he retreated, so that the blood beads on his body would be completely satiated. At this time, when Xing Situ, who had a grudge against Chu Xiu before, saw this scene, he could not help but frown. Seeing Chu Xiu's strength, Xing Situ felt a lingering fear in his heart. Fortunately, he was still rational back then. He did not directly fall out with Chu Xiu because he was worried that Chu Xiu was also a member of the demonic Dao and Wei Shuya's faction. Otherwise, if he angered Chu Xiu, he would definitely not be able to withstand the strength that Chu Xiu had displayed. However, at this time, Xing Situ suddenly thought of something, and his expression became a little uncertain. After a while, he suddenly sent a voice transmission to the martial arts master beside him, who was working together with him to fight against the enemy. "Brother Lin, do me a favor and drag the battle to Chu Xiu." Chapter 756. The man who teamed up with Xing Situ was called Lin Fang. Although he was a martial Dao grandmaster, he wasn't well known in the Jianghu. His master was from a small branch of the lurking demons, and had only accepted him as a disciple before his death. Therefore, he didn't have much time to teach him and didn't train him to become a martial Dao grandmaster. Instead, he was allowed to mingle with the lurking demons. It was not until a while ago that he relied on a treasure to exchange for a period of guidance from Xing Situ's master, Yuan Tianfang, during the Yinma clan's gathering. That was how he was able to step into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. Because of this, he had become good friends with Xing Situ, and even treated him as his superior. Lin Fang didn't participate in the battle against the Earth Demon Hall, but he had heard of the conflict and grievances between Xing Situ and Chu Xiu. Therefore, when he heard Xing Situ's words, he vaguely guessed what Xing Situ wanted to do. Lin Fang couldn't help but lower his voice. "Are you crazy? What kind of situation is this? You're playing tricks in front of so many people? These personal grievances are nothing. You can settle them later. If the patriarchs see this, even Senior Yuan won't be able to protect you." The lurking demons had already reached such a level that killing each other was, of course, prohibited. But a ban was a ban. Such things had definitely happened before. However, it was a serious matter for Xing Situ to still be scheming in the midst of the righteous and demonic wars. Xing Situ said indifferently, "Why are you so agitated? I'm not an idiot. Of course I won't plot against Chu Xiu at a time like this. It's just that we're in a mess right now. We can't beat our opponents, so we accidentally escaped to Chu Xiu's side, and then escaped to recuperate. Is there a problem with that? Chu Xiu is fighting hard for moon-worshipping sect, but we don't want to lose our lives for moon-worshipping sect." Seeing that Lin Fang was still hesitating, Xing Situ couldn't help but sneer. "Do you think that since you didn't offend Chu Xiu, you don't have to play tricks with me? You're wrong. You don't understand Chu Xiu. Although he's quite famous in Jianghu, he's actually not that broad-minded. You and I are good friends, including the fact that you've received master's guidance and successfully became a martial Dao Grandmaster. These are all proof of our relationship. With Chu Xiu's strength and potential, he would definitely become a great figure in the Yinma clan in the future. My master is not good at networking, nor is he good at scheming, so he has always been alone. In the future, if Chu Xiu ascends to the throne, he might suppress my branch. With the relationship between us, do you think that Chu Xiu would leave you out? It doesn't matter if it succeeds or not. It's better than sitting around and waiting for death." Lin Fang's master died early, so he actually didn't know much about the matters of the upper echelons of the Yinma clan. He didn't know if Xing Situ was telling the truth. However, Xing Situ was right about one thing. He was very close to Xing Situ's branch. If he refused today, he didn't know if he would offend Chu Xiu or not, but he would definitely offend Xing Situ. Therefore, he could only cooperate with Xing Situ and pretend to be weak, leading people to Chu Xiu's side. The two people who fought with them were two martial Dao Grandmasters from the true martial sect. In fact, they didn't use their full strength. In fact, the true martial sect was somewhat opposed to this war between the righteous and evil sects. In the last war between the righteous and evil sects, it was Ning Xuanji who took action and disappeared with Duge Weiwei. It could be said that they perished together and saved the entire Jianghu. However, the end result was that the true martial sect had declined from its peak, and had never been able to recover. Apart from some reputation, the true martial sect hadn't obtained anything valuable or meaningful. This had made the disciples of the true martial sect feel very wronged and unworthy. In this war between the righteous and evil sects, it was fine if Lu Chonglu took action, but they actually wanted to take action as well. This was even more unworthy. Therefore, during the battle, all the cultivators of the true martial sect didn't fight with their lives on the line. They were all conserving their strength. At this time, when they saw Xing Situ and Lin Fang escape, they thought that the other party's strength was about to be exhausted, and they fled because they felt that they couldn't win. This made them more spirited. If they could easily kill two martial Dao Grandmasters from the hidden demon clan without paying too much of a price, it was still a worthwhile trade. Therefore, as one chased and the other fled, the two people unconsciously chased after Chu Xiu. At this time, Xing Situ and Lin Fang unleashed all their earth vigor qi at the same time, and even burned a little of their qi and blood to unleash their maximum speed. In an instant, they had already shaken off the two people, leaving the two martial Dao Grandmasters of the true martial sect stunned. They didn't know what the other party was doing. At this time, Cheng Tingshan saw the two people and his eyes lit up. He immediately shouted, brothers from the true martial sect, help me stop the devil Chu Xiu. Cheng Tingshan was very depressed that 6 people were chasing after one person, but they ended up being fooled by that person. The others were also going crazy. In the past, they had only heard that Chu Xiu's combat strength was outstanding, but they had never heard that he was so talented in escaping. Originally, the people of the true martial sect didn't want to participate in the siege of a devil like Chu Xiu, but since Cheng Tingshan had spoken, they couldn't refuse. They could only change their target and kill Chu Xiu. Seeing this scene, a trace of coldness flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes, and he looked at Xing Situ with a trace of killing intent. Although he didn't have evidence to prove that the 2 people were lured here by Xing Situ, this kind of thing didn't need evidence. Chu Xiu really didn't expect Xing Situ to play this game at this time. He was simply courting death. However, this was in line with Xing Situ's character. The people of Jianghu all said that Chu Xiu was crazy and acted abnormally. In fact, Chu Xiu's craziness was only on the surface. When others saw Chu Xiu do something crazy, Chu Xiu would only do it if he had more than 50% confidence. As for the remaining 50%, it was up to fate. Xing Situ was different. He never considered the consequences of his actions, just like his master. Back then he wanted to forge the 9 Yin and Red Abyss devil swords. Without any preparation, he began to kill people to forge the swords. In the end, he was chased all over Jianghu. If Chu Xiu had been in this situation, he would have definitely plotted in secret and killed a large number of martial artists from the 5 major sword sects to forge the swords. Then he would have planned an escape route and calmly escaped. This was the biggest difference between Chu Xiu and Xing Situ. Right now, Xing Situ had suddenly come up with this idea. He had just started a feud with Chu Xiu and now he was up to something. He didn't care about the situation at all. This was clearly Xing Situ's style. In the distance, Xing Situ also saw the murderous look in Chu Xiu's eyes. He couldn't help but sneer. He didn't care at all. So what if he saw it? Both sides were already enemies anyway. Without any evidence, even if Chu Xiu reported this to Wei Shuya, he wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Lin Feng, who stood next to Xing Situ, was a little nervous. He wasn't Xing Situ, who had Yuan Tianfeng's protection. He was a demonic martial artist who was originally a rogue cultivator. It was extremely difficult for him to become a martial Dao grandmaster. Now that he had offended Chu Xiu, it would be troublesome. However, it was Chu Xiu who was in trouble. His Heaven's Son gazing at air skill was indeed miraculous. He had been able to escape from the siege of 6 martial Dao grandmasters. Now that there were 2 more people, the pressure on Chu Xiu increased. These 2 people weren't too strong. His Heaven's Son gazing at air skill could see through their flaws. The problem was that even though he could see through their flaws, sometimes Chu Xiu couldn't dodge them, and could only fight them head-on. The battle here also attracted the attention of many people, and everyone present was shocked. Chu Xiu was really strong. He was fighting against 8 martial artists of the same level. Perhaps even a true fire spirit refinement state expert didn't have this kind of treatment. Seeing the 8 people rushing at Chu Xiu from all directions like an inescapable net, leaving almost no space for Chu Xiu to escape, Chu Xiu's eyes also revealed a fierce murderous intent. The greedy blade appeared in Chu Xiu's hand. Terrifying devil qi and murderous qi were all poured into the greedy blade. An extremely turbulent saber intent surged. It was even more powerful than the saber intent on the greedy blade that could arouse people's greed. As the saber slashed down, the gang energy's saber light instantly drowned everything. It was as if it was tearing the sky and earth apart, carrying the great power of heaven and earth with it. 7 limits sea breaking. The moment the saber slashed out, the greedy blade in Chu Xiu's hand couldn't withstand the powerful force and shattered. It made Chu Xiu's heart ache for 3 breaths. If the weapon was not sturdy enough to perform a martial skill of this level, it would basically be like a consumable. It would shatter every time it was used. At this moment, Cheng Tingshan and the other 8 people were fighting against Chu Xiu's sea breaking at the same time. At this time, no one dared to hold back. Everyone attacked with all their strength. Gang energy and sword lights of various attributes burst out one after another. Only then did they barely block Chu Xiu's sea breaking saber. However, The 2 martial arts practitioners from the true martial sect who were weaker among the 8 of them couldn't withstand the powerful saber intent. They spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. Cheng Tingshan and the others didn't have it easy either. Although the force was distributed among the 8 of them, his hands were still numb from the shock of the saber. Su Yan and the other 2 from the Great Light Temple were the only ones who were in a better condition. Their physical cultivation was extremely powerful. At this moment, apart from being a little exhausted, they weren't injured. The 8 of them looked at Chu Xiu with a hint of shock in their eyes. If it were anyone else fighting against 8 people, they would only be able to barely withstand it. However, Chu Xiu actually dared to fight back head-on. Moreover, he even repelled all 8 of them. The strength of his strength was terrifying. At this moment, Chu Xiu gathered all the demonic energy around him. Wisps of pitch-black demonic energy surrounded Chu Xiu's body. Even his eyes were dyed pitch-black. The terrifying demonic energy in Chu Xiu's hands condensed into a ferocious-looking giant bow. As the bow was knocked, 2 giant demonic energy hands condensed behind Chu Xiu. One of them held the bow, while the other 3 held the bowstring. As the bow was pulled into a full moon, a terrifying aura condensed in the demonic bow. Seeing this, the expressions of Cheng Tingshan and the other 8 people changed. They quickly retreated, running as far as they could. Chapter 757. Chu Xiu had only used the Triple City Annihilation arrow once, which was when he faced Fang Jinwu. In reality, no one had seen the details of that battle, but when Chu Xiu's arrow pierced through the giant Buddha, everyone in the distance had seen it. Therefore, when Feng Manlu wrote about Chu Xiu, he naturally included those details. The few people present had also heard about that battle. At that moment, when they saw Chu Xiu's stance, everyone knew that it had to be the terrifying arrow that Chu Xiu had used to kill Fang Jinwu back then. They had spent so much effort to block that slash just now, let alone Chu Xiu's arrow. It was almost certain that anyone who was hit would die. When they besieged Chu Xiu earlier, none of them were afraid. Even if some of them were killed by Chu Xiu on the spot, none of them would retreat. However, the problem was that Chu Xiu was clearly pointing an arrow at them. As long as he let go, he would take away a life. No one knew if they were that person, and no one wanted to be that person. This kind of psychological pressure was unbearable, even if it was just a lie. If the Great Light Temple was in danger, Su Yan would have the guts to take Chu Xiu's arrow head-on. Even if he died, the other disciples of the Great Light Temple would avenge him. However, under such circumstances, Su Yan did not want to die so pointlessly. The 8 martial Dao masters were frightened by Chu Xiu's stance and fled in panic. Not only was the scene shocking, but it was also a little funny. Feng Manlu's anemophilia observed the battlefield carefully from a tree high above, not missing any details. Previously, they had been observing Donghuang Tai and the other powerhouses in the true fire spirit refinement realm, but somehow, their target had changed to Chu Xiu. It had to be said that Chu Xiu, the outsider who came to help, was even more radical and high-profile than the martial artists of the moon-worshipping cult. Those who didn't know would think that he was Yi Xiaonan's direct disciple. Apart from the Eastern Emperor Tai and the other powerhouses of the true fire refinement realm, Chu Xiu had killed the most people and caused the greatest impact. Seeing how Chu Xiu was able to frighten the 8 of them into fleeing in panic with just a single move, this might really gave off the feeling of a tyrant from the demonic path. At this moment, the expression in Chu Xiu's eyes didn't change at all as he watched the 8 of them flee. A pitch-black arrow condensed in the demonic bow, and that terrifying power made even Chu Xiu's heart palpitate. The Triple City Extinguishing Arrow was a powerful martial skill that could destroy a giant steel city in the past. Now, if Chu Xiu were to use it, he would probably only be able to scratch the surface. He might not even be able to display 100th, or even 1,000th of this martial skill's power. Of course, this kind of power was enough for the current Chu Xiu. Previously, when Chu Xiu used the Triple City Extinguishing Arrow, because he didn't have any experience, he used his blood qi to condense the arrow. However, there was a first time for everything. The first time he wasn't familiar with it, but the second time, he felt much better. Just like the current Chu Xiu, although he had also exploded with almost all of his power, He wasn't so miserable that he had to use the power of his blood chi to condense the arrow. The three arms released the bowstring at the same time, and in an instant, an extremely powerful wave of demonic energy erupted. Wherever the arrow passed, everything would wither and wither. It was an extreme power of nirvanic destruction, and everything would be destroyed. The warriors who were in the path of the arrow, whether they were from the righteous path or the demonic path, all had a look of horror on their faces. They immediately gave up fighting and hurriedly dodged, for fear that Chu Xiu's arrow would miss and accidentally injure them. However, what was surprising was that Chu Xiu's arrow was not aimed at Cheng Tingshan, nor was it aimed at Su Yan from the Great Light Temple, nor was it aimed at the warriors from the Storm Sword Tomb and the real martial arts cult. Instead, it was aimed at Xing Situ. After Xing Situ diverted the trouble, they didn't go too far away. Instead, they observed the battle situation on Chu Xiu's side from a short distance. When he saw that Chu Xiu had used all his strength to break through the situation, Xing Situ secretly cursed that the warriors of the righteous path were really useless. They were even ranked on the reputation list, but this was all they had? However, in the next moment, Chu Xiu's Triple City Annihilation arrow had already burst out. The moment the arrow was released, Xing Situ had a feeling that the arrow was aimed at him. The reason was very simple. The moment the arrow was released, a horrifying killing intent had already locked onto him. There was even an extremely mysterious feeling that locked onto his surroundings. It felt like an inescapable net, blocking all the places around him to dodge. He was like an insect that had fallen into a spider's web, and his so-called struggle was futile. In this life and death crisis, Xing Situ directly spat out a mouthful of blood. The two long swords in front of him, the Nine Yin and Red Abyss, merged into one, and a powerful demonic energy and blood chi swept out, forming a huge vortex in front of him. Next to him, Lin Feng was stunned at first, and then he felt the power of the arrow. Immediately, his scalp went numb. He burned his chi and blood, turned around and fled. At this moment, how could he care about their friendship in the past and not offend Yuan Tianfang? As Chu Xiu shot the arrow, everyone present was stunned. No one knew what Chu Xiu was up to. Just now he was fighting 1 against 8, showing off the power of the diabolism. Why did he suddenly turn his head to his own people and prepare to slay demons and defend righteousness? Xing Situ was still very famous in Jianghu. After all, in the past he had killed many warriors of the 5 major sword sects and survived the joint pursuit of the 5 major sword sects. But everyone knew that he was the boss of the Hidden Devil clan, the disciple of the 10 Directions Old Devil, Yuan Tianfang, and a standard warrior of the Hidden Devil clan. Why did Chu Xiu want to kill him now? The power of Chu Xiu's sword was so influential that even Yuan Tianfang, who was fighting with the Karma Meditation Hall's first seat of the Great Light Temple, was attracted. But when he saw that the target of Chu Xiu's arrow was Xing Situ, his expression suddenly changed, and he shouted angrily, "Chu Xiu! How dare you!" Yuan Tianfang was an old man dressed in black, and his face was grim. He was also a ruthless person when he was at his peak. He seemed to have some enmity with the Dao sect, and most of the people he killed were Taoist priests. Back then, the Chunyang Dao sect and the True Martial sect's True Fire Spirit Refinement Realm powerhouses were defeated by him. But ever since he was sent flying by the old Taoist priest beside the old Celestial Master with a horsetail whisk, he rarely returned to the Central Plains, especially the land of West Chu. But it was not embarrassing to be defeated by Dragon Tiger Mountain. After all, it was the #1 sect of the Dao sect, and it did not damage his prestige as the boss of the demon sect. But now, Chu Xiu dared to attack his disciple in such a situation. This made Yuan Tianfang unusually angry, and he felt that his prestige had been challenged. He wanted to help, but Su Jing, who was in front of him, laughed softly. Buddha's light shone around him, and his body split into 5, all attacking Yuan Tianfang at the same time. Yuan Tianfang could not even tell which one was real. The Great Light Temple did not include the older warriors who had begun to cultivate in seclusion. Among the warriors of the Su generation, other than the abbot, the strongest were the first seats of the 3 major meditation halls. Among them, Su Yun was the strongest and the most overbearing. Although Su Du seemed to be frivolous, he was the youngest and had the greatest potential. Only Su Jing of the Karma Hall rarely left the Great Light Temple, and he did not even leave the Karma Hall. No one knew how strong he was. They only knew that he had extremely high attainments in the path of karma, and he could be called the brain of the Great Light Temple. When Su Ci was in seclusion and Su Yin was in charge of the Great Light Temple, he had to discuss with Su Jing whenever something big happened. This time, it was rare for Su Jing to appear in front of the people of the Jianghu. In everyone's opinion, this mysterious first seat of the Karma Hall must be an enlightened monk, and his strength must have reached the true fire spirit refinement realm. But in reality, it was true that Su Jing was in the true fire spirit refinement realm, but he was a fair and fat monk. He always had an annoying smile on his face that said, "I have seen through everything." He had already seen Chu Xiu's attack just now. Although he didn't know why Chu Xiu would kill each other at such a time. If he didn't add fuel to the fire when it was a battle between demonic cultivators, could it be that he was going to stop them? Yuan Tianfang was blocked by Su Jing and could not get away. He could only take out a slightly damaged flag with devil chi from the secret space box and throw it in Xing Situ's direction. The flag came roaring with devil chi, wanting to help his disciple block this attack. This demonic chi flag wasn't his weapon. Instead, it was the battle flag of one of the Kunlun demon sect's halls in the past. Although it was already damaged, it was still stained with demonic blood, and its strength was much stronger than before. It could be considered as a treasure. Originally, he had planned to give this to one of his disciples as a gift, but in order to save someone, he had no choice but to use it first. However, under Chu Xiu's triple city destruction arrow, the devil chi on the flag that barely made it in time surged violently, but it was instantly pierced by the arrow. Xing Situ roared angrily and gave up on dodging the arrow. He gathered all his strength and chi on the Nine Red Abyss. The two swords combined into one, and the energy that erupted was equally terrifying. However, it was still useless. The pitch-black arrow was only slightly hindered. In the next moment, Xing Situ's Nine Red Abyss began to shatter. These two demonic weapons, forged with the blood of countless swordsmen, were finally completely shattered in Chu Xiu's hands. The pitch-black power of nirvanic destruction erupted. Xing Situ watched as the arrow pierced his heart meridian. A black dot began to spread, and in an instant, all his life force was devoured by the arrow of nirvanic destruction. Everyone was dumbfounded. However, Chu Xiu didn't seem to care. He walked up to Xing Situ and used the great demonic blood art to devour the remaining blood in his body. Although Xing Situ had burned some of his blood essence, he still had some left. After devouring the blood of so many martial Dao masters, the blood pearl in Chu Xiu's body finally fluctuated. It was full. Chapter 758. Did Xing Situ think others wouldn't dare do the same? How naive. Xing Situ was a classic example. Most demonic cultivators acted according to their whims and disregarded the consequences. Xing Situ hadn't died because of his strength and luck, but this time, he dared provoke Chu Xiu without considering the consequences. That was suicide. Did he think Chu Xiu wouldn't dare kill him? Chu Xiu didn't care about evidence when it came to killing. The only difference was whether he could kill or not. In Chu Xiu's eyes, Xing Situ was the kind of person who could be killed. Chu Xiu, you're dead. Yuan Tianfang roared angrily again, and immediately tried to break away from Su Jing to attack Chu Xiu. This time, Su Jing didn't stop him, allowing Yuan Tianfang to attack Chu Xiu. He wasn't going to stand in the way of demonic cultivators killing each other. However, Wei Shuya appeared in front of Yuan Tianfang, preventing him from making a move. Elder Wei, get out of my way. Chu Xiu killed my disciple. Wei Shuya growled. We'll talk about it after this. Yuan Tianfang was furious. So many people saw it. Chu Xiu killed my disciple. Old Wei, are you still planning to side with Chu Xiu at this time? Wei Shuya's expression didn't change. I told you no matter who he killed, we'll talk about it later. This is the battlefield of the righteous and demonic sections. You've lived for so long, yet you still can't tell what's more important? Yuan Tianfang's dark face flushed red, but he forced himself to hold it in. He turned to fight Su Jing again, his attacks more ferocious than before, as if he were venting his anger. It had to be said that Wei Shuya's experience was very useful at times. Yuan Tianfang was at the true fire spirit refinement realm, but when Wei Shuya and the 5 sky fiends of Ninth Mountain had conquered the world and made a name for themselves, Yuan Tianfang was just a poor wandering demonic cultivator. His strength wasn't even worth mentioning. Of course, the main reason Yuan Tianfang took a step back was because of Wei Shuya's strength. Although Wei Shuya was not young, his strength was unfathomable in the Hidden Devil clan. He was definitely not untouchable. It was unwise to attack Wei Shuya at this time. Wei Shuya turned to look at Chu Xiu and frowned slightly. To be honest, he hadn't seen what Xing Situ had done. However, he believed in Chu Xiu. It wasn't that he believed in Chu Xiu's character, that he wouldn't kill a fellow disciple, but that he believed that Chu Xiu wouldn't do something stupid, especially not in front of so many people. Therefore, since Chu Xiu killed Xing Situ, there must be a reason why he deserved to die. At present, the outcome of the war between the righteous and demonic paths had yet to be decided, so these matters had to wait until later. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, after Chu Xiu devoured Xing Situ's qi and blood, the blood bead in his body was already full. Of course, there was nothing Chu Xiu could do if it wasn't full, because Chu Xiu didn't have the strength to kill another martial Dao master to feed it. This time, although Chu Xiu's execution of the triple extinguishing city arrow did not result in a severe backlash like the last time, he did not feel good either. His strength was almost completely depleted. Therefore, it was time for Chu Xiu to keep a low profile. He retreated to the periphery of the battlefield, and no one stopped him. To be more precise, no one dared to stop him. Chu Xiu's arrow just now was too terrifying. It was so powerful that even a powerhouse at the true fire spirit refinement realm couldn't stop it. Although Chu Xiu didn't seem to be in good condition, who could guarantee that Chu Xiu didn't have the strength to shoot a second arrow? Moreover, Chu Xiu's madness was deeply rooted in people's hearts. Even the moon-worshipping sect thought so. When this guy went crazy, he would even kill his own people. It was really hard to guess. Just as Chu Xiu retreated from the battlefield in a low-key manner, many warriors in the periphery of the moon-worshipping sect were also watching the fierce battle. Among them were people from Wind Sweeping Tower, and some small forces came to watch the show secretly. Of course, there were also people who came to watch the show openly, such as Chunqing Di. The World Alliance was in West Chu. In his words, it was fine if he didn't participate in this kind of event, but it would be a pity if he couldn't even watch the show. Therefore, Chunqing Di directly sat on the tallest tree with Xie Xiaolu and watched the fierce battle not far away. Even Chunqing Di brought a jar of wine with him and took a sip from it from time to time. It was like watching a show, which made the surrounding warriors from Wind Sweeping Tower speechless. At this time, Xie Xiaolu stared at Chu Xiu slowly retreating from the battlefield. He couldn't help but sigh. Brother Chu is really Brother Chu. He forcibly turned the battle between the moon-worshipping sect and the righteous sects into his own home ground. But why is he so desperate? Could it be that the moon-worshipping sect has some secret deal with him? Xie Xiaolu only wondered why Chu Xiu was so desperate to kill the righteous sects, but he didn't wonder why Chu Xiu killed Xing Situ. He understood Chu Xiu's character very well. It didn't matter whether that guy was from the Hidden Devil clan or not. As long as he provoked Chu Xiu, he would basically kill him. It was simple and direct. Emperor Chunqingdi chuckled and said, "It doesn't matter if we kill him sooner or later. That kid Chu Xiu has indeed exceeded my expectations. If we let him continue to grow, I reckon that he will become the main character in the next great war between the righteous and demonic factions. But the young people of this generation are really not weak. If I'm not wrong, Zhongxian is also about to break through. In this war, Zhongxian would naturally take part. Just as Chu Xiu was fighting the righteous sects, Zhongxian was also killing in and out of the moon-worshipping sect's warriors. The golden Buddha's light around him soared to the sky. The bright king seal was extremely fierce and violent. Wherever it passed, countless moon-worshipping sect's warriors either had their bones broken or were directly killed on the spot. It was also extremely high profile. So Zhongxian immediately attracted the moon-worshipping sect's saintess and was directly drowned by her poisonous insects. However, Zhongxian's Moonlight King glazed golden body was too strong. It was so strong that those poisonous insects couldn't even break through his body. Seeing this scene, Yi Tianxie also attacked, but after a few moves, he was directly hit by Zhongxian's bright king seal, and was sent flying while vomiting blood. Seeing Zhongxian being so arrogant, Mountain Ghost of the moon-worshipping sect's 9 great magi also began to attack, cooperating with the moon-worshipping sect's saintess to kill Zhongxian. In the end, it was 2 against 1. And even when his realm was higher than the other party, Mountain Ghost still couldn't defeat the other party. Moreover, the more he fought, the more Mountain Ghost felt that something was wrong. But before he could react, Zhongxian's body was already shining with a layer of Buddha's light. The simplest bright king seal fell, but it seemed to carry a huge force that could shake mountains, directly hitting Mountain Ghost until he vomited blood and was seriously injured. As the seal blasted out, Zhongxian's aura also continued to rise, and finally reached a critical point. He finally broke through and became a martial Dao Grandmaster. At this moment, the top 3 existences on the Longhu list finally stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. It could be said that if it weren't for Chu Xiu this time, Zhongxian's performance was also the most eye-catching. Chen Qingdi sighed at the side. This generation of young people is really good. Chu Xiu, Zhang Qingzhen, and Zhongxian are probably the ones who advanced to the martial Dao Grandmaster realm the fastest among the recent generations of young martial artists. Feng Qixiao and Ning Bailu aren't bad either. It's rare. It's really a world of great competition. Such outstanding young talents are emerging one after another, and they're all gathered together. In Chen Qingdi's eyes, whether it was Chu Xiu, Zhang Qingzhen, or the others, each of them had the strength to suppress the martial artists of their generation. But now they were all gathered together. He didn't know if this was a blessing or a curse. Thinking of this, Chen Qingdi suddenly glanced at Xie Xiaolu next to him and slapped him on the head, causing Xie Xiaolu to stagger. Look at the others, then look at yourself. When can you become the first on the Longhu list? Are you going to wait until the people before you step into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm before it's your turn? Xie Xiaolu covered his head with a wronged expression. Why was he the one who suffered when others broke through? At this time, the situation on the battlefield had somewhat reversed. Previously, it was definitely the righteous sects who had the upper hand. After all, they had the advantage in numbers. Later on, as the Hidden Demon Clan joined in, even if the Hidden Demon Clan did not plan to go all out, the 2 sides were still locked in a stalemate. And the one who broke this situation happened to be Chu Xiu, who was prepared to slack off. In this battle, even if there were more than 10 true Fire Spirit Refinement Realm powerhouses, the ones who really played a key role were those martial Dao Grandmasters. In the end, Chu Xiu first crippled 3 people from Chunyang Dao sect, and then attracted the attacks of 8 people. Although the 8 people did not die in the end, Chu Xiu's delay caused the situation to tilt. The righteous sects were under great pressure. At this time, an old Taoist from Chunyang Dao sect who had reached true Fire Spirit Refinement realm suddenly saw Chen Qingdi and the others watching the battle from afar. This old Taoist was called Jing Yuanzi, and he was the oldest martial artist in Chunyang Dao sect. He had even participated in the battle to exterminate the 5 sky demons of 9 Heaven Mountain. He could be considered as an existence of the same generation as Wei Shuya. Chen Qingdi and the others who were watching the show were not from the diabolism, but they were not from the righteous either. When neither side was a threat to them, protecting themselves was the best choice. But at this time, the righteous sects were at a disadvantage, and they were still watching the show. Did they not see the big picture? Did they want the underworld to become the demonic underworld of the past? That was Jing Yuanzi's mentality. This was the reason why Chu Xiu said that the people from Chunyang Dao sect could not be communicated with at all. They were reasonable, but they only talked about their own reasons. Jing Yuanzi left the battle and quickly came in front of Chen Qingdi and the others. He said in a deep voice, "Everyone, the righteous martial arts world is in a disadvantageous situation now. Are you still not going to help? Do you really want the righteous and evil in the underworld to be reversed?" Many of the martial artists present frowned. They were just there to watch the show. Why were they implicated? Chen Qingdi raised his eyebrows and said, "What a joke. What does the battle between the righteous and evil have to do with me?" Jing Yuanzi snorted and said, "Alliance Master Chen, You don't want to help and watch the righteous martial arts world be defeated. Could it be that you have colluded with the moon-worshipping sect? Chapter 759. Jing Yuanzi's words contained a hint of threat. For all the sects in the pugilistic world, being accused of colluding with the moon-worshipping cult basically made them part of the demon Dao. Chen Qingdi was stunned. Suddenly, a smile bloomed at the corner of his mouth. In the end, the smile even turned into a maniacal laugh. Jing Yuanzi actually felt a little flustered. Colluding? Why would I, Chen Qingdi, collude with others? Old bullnose, are you threatening me? What I hate the most in my life is people threatening me. As soon as he finished speaking, Chen Qingdi blasted out a punch. In an instant, the wind and clouds changed, and the sky and earth collapsed. Chen Qingdi's fist intent was incomparably domineering, just like his person. It was such a simple punch, without any changes, nor did it contain any kind of gang qi. It was a simple punch with pure strength, but it was incomparably domineering. The fist shatters mountains and rivers. Under Chen Qingdi's punch, the surrounding space began to distort, and the sound of the sonic boom was like the roar of thunder. Jing Yuanzi shouted angrily. His hand formed a seal, and powerful pure yang qi condensed into a seal, affecting the heaven and earth. His entire person seemed to have descended from the sky, and it was extremely shocking. Although Jing Yuanzi was also old, his appearance here meant that he still had combat power. He had not yet reached the point where his blood and qi were declining due to old age. However, under Chen Qingdi's punch, the sun did not even last for a breath's time. In the next moment, it shattered with a loud bang. Jing Yuanzi spat out a mouthful of blood. Chen Qingdi's punch sent him flying hundreds of feet away, creating a hole that was dozens of feet deep. He immediately passed out. Whether it was the battlefield of the righteous Dao War, or the surroundings of Chen Qingdi, it was all silent. Everyone looked at Chen Qingdi in shock. One punch had seriously injured a true fire spirit refinement realm expert to the point of vomiting blood. What was going on with Chen Qingdi? Just now, Chu Xiu fought against 8 people alone, which was at least within common sense. But now, with the strength of Chen Qingdi, it was completely unreasonable. Everyone could sense that Chen Qingdi's punch had clearly surpassed most of the true fire spirit refinement state, but he was still a martial Dao master. But the problem is, have any of you seen such a powerful martial Dao Grand Master? Looking at Jing Yuanzi in the hole, Chen Qingdi sneered. Ignorant fool. After that, Chen Qingdi took Xie Xiaolu and left. He was not afraid, but the outcome had already been decided, and there was no point in continuing to watch. The righteous sects had sent out ignorant old fellows like Jing Yuanzi. It would be strange if they could destroy the moon-worshipping cult. At this moment, the shock that Chen Qingdi brought to the crowd was still there. Some of the warriors from the Forgetting Sword Hut couldn't help but pout. This old Taoist of the pure Yongdao sect was really rusty in the head. To actually provoke Emperor Chen Qingdi at a time like this was basically seeking death. In fact, it was easy to imagine that the World Alliance had not risen in West Chu for a long time. Moreover, Chen Qingdi was aggressive and unyielding. How could such a character not offend people? But Chen Qingdi had been in West Chu for a long time. Whether it was the moon-worshipping cult or the Taoist master mansion of Longhu Mountain, these two sects, one evil and one righteous, had not made things difficult for Chen Qingdi. This was not because the moon-worshipping cult and the Taoist master mansion were easy to talk to, but because Chen Qingdi had the strength. In the past, because of the Dong family, someone from the Taoist master mansion had come to cause trouble for Chen Qingdi. In the end, they were stopped by another true fire spirit refinement state expert from the Taoist master mansion. One could imagine the strength of Chen Qingdi. The Taoist master mansion probably knew about it. In the face of an absolute conflict of interest, no one was willing to fight with a monster like Chen Qingdi. And just when the outcome of the battle was about to be decided on the moon-worshipping cult side, the result of the battle on the Broken Intestines Cliff was already out. The fierce battle between the heaven and earth mysterious realm experts was like the end of the world. The area within a radius of more than 10 miles had been turned into a mess. Even the Broken Intestines Cliff had disappeared, and was replaced by a big pit. The 3 people from the Sword King City looked dispirited. Although they were not dead, they were already seriously injured. Especially the human king swords in their hands. They no longer had their imposing manner. It was obvious that their spiritual nature had been damaged. No one knew if they could recover. Lu Chonglu of the true martial sect was also very miserable. The horsetail whisk left by Ning Xuanji in his hand had been completely destroyed. His whole face was pale and his aura was weak. If the horsetail whisk had not taken the blow for him just now, he would have already died. The Ying family's patriarch, Ying Si, was constantly panting. His originally meticulous hair was now disheveled. His arms were trembling slightly, and blood was constantly dripping. The only person present who was slightly better was the Great Light Temple's Su Si. He did not seem to have any injuries. However, the golden Buddhist light around him was extremely dim. It was so dim that it could not even be seen if one did not look carefully. Dong Huangtai was right. Even when facing the siege of so many people, which seemed like a dead end to others, Yi Xiaonan did not lose. He did not lose. Although he did not lose, he did not win either. At that moment, Yi Xiaonan's white clothes were fluttering in the wind. His chest was stained with specks of blood. It was unknown whether it was his or someone else's. Most importantly, Yi Xiaonan's aura was extremely weak. It was as if he would collapse in the next moment. However, no one present moved. That was what everyone had thought before. In the end, Yi Xiaonan still had strength to spare. No one knew where his limit was. Su Si let out a long sigh. It's fate. 500 years ago, the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed. The righteous path suppressed the demonic path for 500 years. Now they can no longer suppress them. The moon blades around Yi Xiaonan danced around him. They were still stained with blood. No one knew who they belonged to. Fate? I, Yi Xiaonan, have never believed in fate. Looking at Su Si, Yi Xiaonan said calmly, if I had been born 500 years earlier, the demonic path would not have been suppressed by the righteous path for 500 years. Yi Xiaonan's words were very arrogant. However, when he said them, it was as if he was stating a fact. There was not the slightest hint of arrogance. Su Si silently shook his head and turned to leave. Although they had not lost, they could no longer kill Yi Xiaonan. The few of them were not prepared to fight to the death. They also did not have the determination to fight to the death. They had no reason to fight to the death. Fighting to this extent was already their limit. No one lost, but no one won either. Both sides were injured. However, for the moon-worshipping church, they had won this time. Although Yi Xiaonan was seriously injured and the moon-worshipping church had also suffered heavy losses, they had survived this time. At the very least, there would not be another righteous path and demonic path for a short period of time. Fang Fifan and Qi Yuanli, who were watching from over 5 kilometers away, felt cold sweat soaking their clothes. It wasn't that they were ignorant, but that the battle between these people was too shocking. Even if they were separated by 5 kilometers, they were still on tenterhooks, afraid that they would be implicated. Once everyone had left, Fang Fifan seemed to wake up from a dream. He hurriedly said, quick, quick. Send a message to the people of the moon-worshipping church. Tell them that the battle is over. Fang Fifan was still a person who paid attention to details. Although he wanted to witness a righteous path and demonic path war, he would not sit by and watch other martial artists die in vain. Now that Yi Xiaonan's battle was over, there was no need for the battle on the moon-worshipping church's side. In truth, there was no need for the people of Wind-Sweeping Pavilion to send a message. The people of moon-worshipping church had already received the news. For such an important matter, Su Si would definitely inform Su Yun through a secret technique. There was no point in continuing the battle. After receiving the news, Su Yun suddenly retreated. He looked at Dong Huangtai with a complicated expression and shouted, "Disciples of the Great Light Temple, retreat!" When this shout was shouted, everyone present was stunned. However, they instantly understood what was going on. Even if Yi Xiaonan did not win the battle at Broken Intestines Cliff, he definitely did not die. Master Su Si and the others might not be able to do anything to that demon. As the Great Light Temple retreated, the martial artists of the other righteous sects also retreated. The people of the moon-worshipping church did not chase after them. The moon-worshipping church had used all their strength to resist. It could be said that they had suffered heavy losses. At this time, everyone had no strength left. What was the point of chasing after them? However, all the disciples of the moon-worshipping church were cheering. From now on, the status of the moon-worshipping church in the underworld could rise to a higher level. The people of the righteous sects retreated. Wei Shuya also prepared to retreat with his people. To be honest, after this battle, the smell of gunpowder between the moon-worshipping church and Inma did not seem to be so strong. After all, they had fought side by side just now. And no matter what, no matter if it was Ming Mo or Yin Mo, they were both from the demonic Tao. When facing the joint attack of the righteous sects, the only one who could be relied on was the other party. In other words, if it was the Inma clan that was besieged now, the moon-worshipping church would actually take action. Of course, they would not do it for nothing. They would have to pay a price. However, at this moment, Yuan Tianfeng walked over with an angry face and said coldly, "Chu Xiao, you killed my disciple. Now you have to give me an explanation, right? It's very simple. Pay with your life." At the critical moment just now, Wei Shuya stopped him. Now that the battle between the righteous and demonic sects was over, it was time to settle the score. Seeing this scene, everyone present also turned their attention to this side. They had seen the scene of Chu Xiao shooting Xing Situ with an arrow. To be honest, everyone was a little curious. They did not know why Chu Xiao wanted to kill his own people. Wei Shuya stood beside Chu Xiao and said calmly, "Tell me what's going on." "Don't worry. With I hear black is black, white is white. No one can confuse black and white." Chu Xiao nodded and said directly, "I'm not a lunatic. Why would I kill innocent people at a critical moment? It was Xing Situ who deliberately lured two martial Tao Grand Masters from the true martial arts sect to kill me because of the hatred between us. Why can't I kill people when they want to kill me?" Yuan Tianfeng said coldly, "Do you have any evidence?" Chu Xiao sneered and said, "Evidence? What a joke. Someone wants to kill me. What evidence do I need? Don't tell me that I have to be schemed against until I'm seriously injured and half dead before that can be considered as evidence." Chapter 760. In front of so many people, Chu Xiao was telling the truth. It was rare for him to be honest, so he was in the right. However, the problem was that when he argued, he was always reasonable. It was rare for him to tell the truth, but there was no evidence. Of course, it didn't matter whether there was evidence or not. Chu Xiao was not Xing Situ, who did things without considering the consequences. From the beginning of killing Xing Situ, Chu Xiao was not worried that Yuan Tianfeng, the old guy, could not do anything to him. In terms of status, what was Xing Situ? What qualifications did he have to compare with Chu Xiao, who was the representative of the younger generation of the Inma clan? It was him, Chu Xiao. The Inma clan was famous in the Jianghu. Who had the greatest influence? It was still him, Chu Xiao. In addition to qualifications, Xing Situ was simply incomparable to Chu Xiao. Looking at the other party's backing and connections, Yuan Tianfeng was indeed the big boss of the Inma clan. That was right, his strength was there. However, Wei Shuya was able to firmly suppress Yuan Tianfeng, regardless of whether it was his strength or experience. In the past, the 9 mountains' 5 great sky demons were not called for nothing. In the Inma clan, anyone who saw Wei Shuya had to respectfully call him Elder Wei. Once there was a dispute, only Wei Shuya was qualified to balance the relationship between all parties. The 9 mountains' 5 great sky demons were the last backbone of the Inma clan. Whether this group of people admitted it or not, their position was there, and no one could shake it. In terms of other connections, Yuan Tianfeng was eccentric and reclusive. Most of the time, he lived in seclusion in the Devil Cliff Cave of the East Pole Mountain, so the number of friends was limited. Needless to say, on Wei Shuya's side, Chu Xiao, the phaseless demon sect and the Yin demon sect represented by Mei Qinglian would stand on his side. Anyway, no matter what, Chu Xiao could not be afraid of Yuan Tianfeng at all. "How dare you? How dare you quibble?" Yuan Tianfeng took a step forward, and the demonic qi around him rushed into the sky, and his momentum was incomparably majestic. However, before Chu Xiu could make a move, Wei Shuya stood in front of Chu Xiu and said coldly, Yuan Tianfang, who are you calling bold? What? Do you have the final say? Don't you know what kind of person your disciple is? To be honest, even though Chu Xiu had no evidence, Wei Shuya still believed him. Given Xing Situ's personality, it was entirely possible that he would do such a thing. Just as Yuan Tianfang was about to say something, Dong Huangtai, who was watching from the sidelines, said, I say, old demon Yuan, I don't mean to criticize you, but that disciple of yours isn't very good at all. In the past, he even killed a disciple of the Forgetful Sword Hut in West Chu. His methods could only be called crude. After killing, he ran and even caused our moon-worshipping cult to clash with the Forgetful Sword Hut. Chu Xiu Chu people's disciples, Chu's sex Chu's disciples sex disciple to be he didn't killing. Our young friend Chu's reputation in the pugilistic world is clear for all to see. To put it bluntly, if he really wanted to kill Xing Situ, he wouldn't have had to do it in public. If he'd schemed in secret, your disciple wouldn't even know how he died. Everyone present was stunned. No one thought that Dong Huangtai would stand up for Chu Xiu. In fact, Dong Huangtai helped Chu Xiu simply because he admired Chu Xiu. During the fierce battle just now, he had a good impression of Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had first seriously injured 3 people, and then fought against 8 people alone. This had attracted a lot of firepower for the moon-worshipping sect. From Dong Huangtai's point of view, people like Chu Xiu were rare. Although Chu Xiu was from the Yinma clan and he could not poach him away, Dong Huangtai was open and aboveboard. If he admired Chu Xiu, then so be it. He did not mind speaking up for Chu Xiu. As Dong Huangtai spoke, the people from the Yinma clan looked at Chu Xiu differently. Dong Huangtai of the moon-worshipping sect praised and protected him. Moreover, he was from the Bright Demon clan. Was Chu Xiu really that charismatic? Yuan Tianfang was so angry that his face turned red, as if he had been poisoned. Wei Shuya protecting Chu Xiu was one thing, but Dong Huangtai also came to join in the fun. Actually, Yuan Tianfang had many disciples. When he lived in seclusion in the Devil's Cliff Cave in the East Pole Mountain, he had accepted many disciples because he was bored. But among these disciples, Xing Situ was the one who was the most similar to him. Yuan Tianfang liked him the most, and he was also the one who worked hard. In the end, he was killed by Chu Xiu under the watchful eyes of everyone. How could Yuan Tianfang swallow this? But today, he had to swallow this even if he didn't want to. Wei Shuya protecting Chu Xiu with his life, but Dong Huangtai was also here. It was basically impossible for him to kill Chu Xiu. Good. 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 Yuan Tianfang spat out these 3 words, then turned to leave. Wei Shuya turned to Chu Xiu and said, Be careful. This old guy is not very broad-minded. Yuan Tianfang said 3 good in a row, but he was not in a good mood. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, It's okay. I'm not very broad-minded either. After the storm was temporarily suppressed, both sides bid farewell and left. Chu Xiu felt that it was a pity because he didn't get to see Yi Xiaonan, the well-deserved number 1 of the Devil Dao. But after such a great battle, it could be said that the pugilistic world could finally enter a period of peace. Of course, both sides had suffered heavy losses, so it was impossible for it to not be stable. In the great battle, Yi Xiaonan, Su Xiai, and the others all suffered heavy losses. The moon-worshipping church also suffered a lot. More than 10 martial Dao grandmasters from the righteous Dao had fallen, and the rest were incalculable. Even true fire spirit refinement realm experts were seriously injured. The moon-worshipping church didn't have it easy either. Almost the same number of martial Dao grandmasters had fallen, and 4 of the 9 divine magisprius of the moon-worshipping church had died. They couldn't find anyone to replace them in a short time. It could be said to be extremely miserable. The only one who suffered relatively small losses was the Hidden Devil clan. That was because the Hidden Devil clan didn't fight with their lives on the line, and most of them were idling. After such a fierce battle, the pugilistic world's Dragon and Tiger Supreme list should have changed the most. Among the 3 lists, only the Dragon and Tiger list had changed the most. The top 10 of the Fengyun list rarely changed. As for the Supreme list, it couldn't be described in years. Sometimes, There were even no changes for 10 years. But this time, the great battle between the righteous Dao and the devil Dao had blown out a lot of powerhouses, which also led to Windsweeping Tower to revise the Dragon and Tiger Supreme list on a large scale. In the Dragon and Tiger list, Zhong Xian had advanced to Martial Dao Grandmaster, and he was ranked 34th on the Fengyan list, which was Chu Xiu's previous position after Zhang Qingzhen. The other talents on the Dragon and Tiger list had all risen, and Feng Qishao had finally become the number 1 on the Dragon and Tiger list. However, Sword King City probably wouldn't be so happy. Previously, Chu Xiu had heard from Feng Qishao that Sword King City hoped that Feng Qishao could become the third person to step into the Martial Dao Grandmaster realm among his peers. In the end, Zhong Xian had beaten him to it. Relying on someone else's promotion to get to the top was not very glorious. Moreover, this time all 3 true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses of Sword King City were seriously injured. It was even said that Sword King City's treasure, the Human King Sword, seemed to have some problems when fighting with Yi Xiaonan. It was unknown if the higher-ups of Sword King City would be in a bad mood because of this and vent their anger on Feng Qishao. Apart from the Dragon and Tiger list, the Fengyan list had changed the most. The number 1 position on the Fengyan list remained unchanged. It was Ying Sanshu of the Ying clan of Shangshui. This person had become famous in the pugilistic world more than 10 years ago. His battle record could be said to be extremely shocking. He had only lost 3 times in his life, so he was also called Ying Sanshu. Even though so many powerhouses had emerged in the war between the righteous and demonic paths, Windsweeping Tower still did not replace Ying Sanshu's position. The second was Su Yin of the Great Light Temple. Previously, Su Yin was ranked 7th. This time, Su Yin finally showed his full strength and fought head-on against Dong Huangtai. His power was immeasurable, so he deserved to be ranked 2nd. However, Dong Huangtai, who had once fought to a draw with Su Yin, did not appear on the list. This was not because Windsweeping Tower was deliberately suppressing moon-worshipping sect, but because Windsweeping Tower did not dare to do so. This time, in the war between the righteous and demonic paths, it seemed that both sides had suffered losses and fought to a draw. In fact, it was still moon-worshipping sect who had the upper hand. Yi Xiaonan had already been in the limelight. How could they let Dong Huangtai be on the list? This was because Dong Huangtai had fought to a draw with Su Yin. If Su Yin was ranked 2nd and Dong Huangtai was ranked 3rd, it would not be comparable to the list, and they would also offend moon-worshipping sect. However, if Dong Huangtai was ranked 2nd, then Fang Fifen's brain would have been squeezed by a door. No matter how stupid he was, he would not do such a thing. Therefore, it was difficult to deal with the 2nd and 3rd places, so they might as well not let Dong Huangtai be on the list. Anyway, this kind of thing was common. Some demonic path martial artists who were too famous would not be on the list. This was not the first time this had happened. However, the 3rd place on the list was a little surprising, because it was actually Chen Qingdi who was ranked 3rd. In the war between the righteous and demonic paths, Chen Qingdi had only been a bystander. He had only thrown 1 punch, but the result was that he was ranked 3rd on the list. This should be the most dramatic scene. Most importantly, the others could not say anything wrong. Everyone knew that Chen Qingdi's strength was unfathomable. It could not even be measured with common sense. Now he had also become the only one in the top 10 of the list who had not reached the true fire spiritual refinement realm. As for the changes after that, there were not many. Su Xiai had advanced to the mysterious heaven and earth realm, and he had also advanced from the list to the sovereign list. Chu Xiu had also risen by 2 ranks on the list, from 22nd to 19th. In this war between the righteous and demonic paths, Chu Xiu's performance was indeed very eye-catching. It was even more eye-catching than the martial artists of moon-worshipping sect. However, in reality, when it came to the analysis that truly affected his combat strength, Chu Xiu's performance this time was not as convincing as when he had killed Fang Jinwu. Therefore, this time, Windsweeping Tower had raised Chu Xiu's ranking by 2 ranks. In fact, it was not because of Chu Xiu's combat strength, but because of his reputation this time. Hence, it had risen by 2 ranks. Chapter 761. The Windsweeping Tower's reputation list was meant to stir up the pugilistic world. while the sovereign list was filled with heaven and earth enlightenment experts who were still active in the pugilistic world. When Su Ci stepped into the heaven and earth enlightenment realm, he automatically entered the sovereign list. The same was true for the Ying family's patriarch. At the same time, the two of them squeezed out two top experts who hadn't appeared in the pugilistic world for a long time. The Wind Sweeping Towers list was very fair. Apart from Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji, the other people on the sovereign list would be replaced by someone else if they didn't appear in the pugilistic world for a certain period of time. Otherwise, experts of this level might go into seclusion for a period of 10 years. If they were to go into seclusion for a few decades to the point where it was unknown whether they were dead or alive, then the experts on the sovereign list would probably surpass those on the reputation list. After returning to the suppression hall, Chu Xiu went into seclusion and told the others not to disturb him for the time being. In fact, Chu Xiu didn't really want to go into seclusion this time. His realm had already stabilized, and he only killed a few weaker cultivators in the fierce battle. He didn't make any breakthroughs in the battle, so seclusion wouldn't be of much use. He actually wanted to study what the blood bead was. Generally, an existence with self-awareness was a weapon spirit. However, when Chu Xiu looked at the blood bead, it didn't look like a weapon spirit at all. Moreover, after absorbing a cultivator's qi and blood, the blood bead didn't change much other than becoming more crystal clear. Chu Xiu couldn't even feel any power in it. He probed a trace of spiritual qi, but there was no reaction. Chu Xiu hesitated for a moment, then seeped a trace of his spiritual force into the blood bead. In an instant, Chu Xiu's spiritual force was pulled into the blood bead. It was so fast that Chu Xiu didn't even have time to react. The next moment, a sea of blood appeared in front of Chu Xiu. Although it was a virtual existence, the smell of blood was extremely pungent. It was as if everything in front of him was really formed by a boundless sea of blood. Right at this moment, the sea of blood boiled, and a huge bronze pillar slowly emerged from the sea of blood. The bronze pillar was engraved with mysterious and complicated patterns, and there were huge bronze chains extending from it, binding a person. Before Chu Xiu could see that person's face clearly, that person spoke in a dignified voice. "Junior of the later generation, offer up your soul blood, and I'll impart you a supreme demonic art. It'll be more than enough for you to roam the world unhindered. Power, wealth, and beauties are all within your grasp." When that person said the last word, he suddenly saw Chu Xiu's face. His originally dignified tone was like a duck that had been grabbed by the neck. The last word was stuck in his throat, and he couldn't spit it out no matter how hard he tried. At this time, Chu Xiu also saw that person's face clearly. It was a burly man in his 40s. His upper body was bare, and his muscles were bulging and covered with blood-colored veins. This person had a gloomy and perverse appearance, and there was a deep killing intent and baleful aura between his brows. He didn't look like someone easy to deal with. "Lord Dugu." The burly man said those 4 words with 30% fear, 50% apprehension, and 20% fawning. However, in the next moment he suddenly shouted, "No! You're not Lord Dugu. Bah! If you're not Dugu Weiwei, that guy would have died with Ning Xuanji a long time ago. You just happen to look like him, Junior." Chu Xiu frowned and said, "You've seen Dugu Weiwei?" The burly man sneered and said, "Cut the crap, Junior. Offer me your soul blood, and I'll give you something beyond your imagination." Chu Xiu shook his head helplessly and said, "It's really hard to communicate with a guy who doesn't understand human language." As soon as he said that, the demonic qi around Chu Xiu surged and transformed into 2 arms made of demonic qi. A huge and ferocious demonic bow appeared in his hands. He held the bow with one arm and placed the other 3 on the bowstring, aiming straight at the burly man. "Triple city destroying arrow. Who the hell are you?" The burly man shouted in horror. This time, he was really a little afraid. Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Do you really think I'm an idiot? You're just a remnant soul, yet you dare to bluff in front of me? Your strength may have been unfathomable when you were at your peak in the past, but now you can't even produce a small blood bead. How dare you play these little tricks in front of me?" The burly man's acting skills were not very good, but of course he was not too bad either. He had just underestimated Chu Xiu. If there were really some young cultivators who had no experience in the martial world, they might really think that they had picked up an old grandpa and hurriedly dripped their blood to recognize him as their master. However, as soon as he entered, Chu Xiu felt that this was just a real illusion. It was said to be real because this was indeed a sea of blood that had existed before. It was said to be an illusion because this sea of blood was simulated. This burly man might have had the strength to create this sea of blood when he was at his peak in the past, but now he could only use his mental strength to simulate the illusion of the past to bluff people. If Chu Xiu had not absorbed so much blood to activate it, this burly man's remnant soul would probably still be in a deep sleep and would not have any strength at all. With the strength of Chu Xiu's mental energy, he was able to simulate all of his martial techniques in this illusion, easily killing them. The burly man's expression changed and he hurriedly said, "Little brother, don't be rash. Who are you? Are you a direct descendant of our sacred sect? Could it be that you're the reincarnation of Lord Dugu?" Chu Xiu said expressionlessly, "It's not your turn to ask questions now. I'll ask and you'll answer. Otherwise, I'll make sure that you won't even be able to keep your remnant soul. Since you recognize the triple city destroying arrow, you should know how powerful this arrow is even if it's just a simulation of mental strength." The burly man nodded repeatedly and looked very cooperative. He was very sensible. In fact, if he did not cooperate, he would probably not even have his remnant soul left. "Name." The burly man turned his head a little awkwardly, but he still said in a proud tone, "Blood-Sea Demon Venerable. Lu Jiang, he is this Venerable One." In the past, this Venerable One was in charge of dozens of Kunlun devil cults' halls, and was known as the strongest blood demon hall. Even the 4 great demon venerables had to be polite to this Venerable One, and did not dare to be the slightest bit presumptuous. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. If that was the case, then this guy's background was really not small. After joining the Yinma clan for a long time, Chu Xiu had a relatively good understanding of the structure of the Kunlun devil cult in the past. In the past, the Kunlun devil cult was mainly composed of 2 major forces. One was like Mr. Lu's phaseless demon sect, and Mei Qinglian's Yin demon sect, which belonged to a branch of the Kunlun devil cult. The experts in their sects could even obtain the title of demon envoy of the Kunlun devil cult. The other was a hall under the jurisdiction of the Kunlun devil cult. Although it was only a hall, the strength of one of the halls could be compared to a major sect in the Jianghu. For example, the Demon Heart Hall that Chu Xiu had obtained inheritance from, the strength of its hall master, Nangong Wuming, was considered top even in the true fire spirit refinement realm. There was also the remnants of the Earth Demon Hall that Chu Xiu had completely destroyed. At its peak, it was also the main hall of the Kunlun devil cult. There was probably more than one person in the true fire spirit refinement realm. As for the few demon lords of the Kunlun devil cult, no one had ever said how strong they were. However, Chu Xiu guessed that they should have reached the heaven and earth mysterious realm. Otherwise, after Dugu Weiwei had disappeared, they would not have been able to resist the alliance of all the righteous sects in the Jianghu for such a long time. This Lu Jiang, he said that he was the hall master of the Blood Demon Hall, which meant that he should be at least in the true fire spirit refinement realm. As for the fact that even the 4 demon lords had to be polite to him, he was most likely trying to flatter himself. If his strength was comparable to the 4 demon lords, then the Kunlun devil cult should have had 5 demon lords in the past. Lu Jiang, he seemed to have seen through Chu Xiu's thoughts. He snorted coldly and said, "If it was a head-on battle, I would indeed not be a match for the 4 of them. However, if it was a real fight to the death, even if the 4 of them joined forces, they would not be able to kill me. Cut the crap. Why did you mistake me for Dugu Weiwei just now? Don't tell me that I look exactly the same as Dugu Weiwei?" In the past, when Chu Xiu had been in the illusion, he had seen the appearance of a man in the boundless blood sea of the Netherworld River. At that time, Chu Xiu had guessed that it should have been Dugu Weiwei. However, now Lu Jiang, he had mistaken him for Dugu Weiwei. Could it be that he had guessed wrongly? That his current appearance was exactly the same as Dugu Weiwei's? Lu Jiang, he hesitated for a moment, then shook his head and said, "How should I put it? Lord Dugu has a secret technique of 3 incarnations. In the past, he had annihilated the Tianyuan Dao Palace, a major Dao sect, and obtained a secret manual of the Dao sect. It was a secret technique that specialized in cultivating the three souls of a person. The heaven and earth souls are always outside, and only the life soul is in the body. The Tianyuan Dao Palace cultivates this secret technique to increase their spiritual power, but Lord Dugu has evolved it into a kind of incarnation secret technique. It can allow the heaven and earth souls to leave the body for a long period of time. Furthermore, he has refined two soulless incarnations. As long as the heaven and earth souls are inserted into them, they will be equivalent to Lord Duga's avatars, and will have 90% of his original battle strength. Your appearance is exactly the same as Lord Duga's earth soul incarnation, but I can guarantee that you are definitely not Lord Dugu. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Why?" Lu Jiang, he said with certainty. A person's appearance can be changed, but their internal aura, soul, and various other subtle things cannot be changed. In any case, you are definitely not Lord Dugu. Chu Xiu frowned. The connection between him and Dugu Weiwei had always existed, but it was like a tangled mess, and he could never figure it out. Now the only thing Chu Xiu could be sure of was that his transmigration and his appearance in this world was definitely related to Dugu Weiwei. Previously, Chu Xiu had suspected that he was the reincarnation of Dugu Weiwei, and had even asked Grandmaster Yuanji to help him analyze it, but to no avail. Now that he knew that his appearance was exactly the same as one of Dugu Weiwei's incarnations, things became a little more confusing. Temporarily putting aside these things that he could not understand, Chu Xiu continued to point the soul-extinguishing arrow at Lu Jianghe and said, "Now tell me, how did you get imprisoned here?" Just as Lu Jianghe was about to speak, Chu Xiu said in a gloomy tone, "Tell me the truth. Otherwise, if I let go, you know the consequences. Even if you were the former hall master of the Blood Demon Hall, you haven't tried the power of the Triple City extinguishing arrow, have you? Now you have the chance to try it." You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.